Oh, I wasn't even filming. Alrighty then. Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm Charlotte. So today I just wanted to do a final update for February's Read With Me. I'm so far up to 14 books. By the way, if you want to know how I got this look right here, I did a Play With Me episode. I will link it down below. So, okay, I just want to go through those books. So let's see. The books that I read through the last week. Blackout, Remembering the Things I Drank to Forget by Sarah Hepola. I'm not sure. Sarah Hepola. This was a memoir about a writer who also happens to be an alcoholic, and this was pretty good. It was okay, it was readable. If you're gonna read one memoir about alcoholism, I would prefer to recommend Drinking by Carolyn Knapp, which actually she mentions in this memoir. Sarah Hepola mentions that memoir in this book of hers, and she mentions, you know, that she read it over and over and over again. I think what I enjoyed the most about Blackout was her retelling and recounting how most of her blackouts a lot of the times had to do with her ending up in a stranger's bed and not knowing how she got there. And actually this is the book that that showed me that there's a difference between blacking out and passing out, and that there are very important differences between them, and that a blackout is usually experienced by people who have alcoholic tendencies, if not being full-blown alcoholic, because it's not about just being really, really drunk and then passing out. It's a complete memory blackout, and it only happens when your blood alcohol gets to a certain level by basically binge drinking. So I thought that was really interesting to make the distinction between just simply between simply passing out and being drunk, which I think a lot of people have experienced, and blacking out, which not necessarily everyone has experienced. At her worst, she was blacking out all the time. Every time she drank, she blacked out, which I have heard is also the case for most alcoholics. She also brought up the fact that blackouts for men usually involves waking up and not remembering the harm that they caused or the fights that they got into, and that women's blackouts often involve waking up in someone's bed, in a stranger's bed, not knowing how she got there, not knowing what she did, and there's a lot of shame for both. Obviously, there's a lot of shame involved in these blackout episodes. So it just helped expand my understanding of alcoholism, which I aim to understand alcoholism because it's one of the most common addictions that afflicts us, and alcoholism has been in my family as well, so it has personally affected me. And I have had some addictive tendencies myself. I've never been an alcoholic, and I don't claim to ever have been an alcoholic, but I know that I have had to be careful with my consumption before. Yeah, that I can relate to the tendencies. I remember when I was in high school, and that's when I did most of my drinking, to be honest. Not so great. And I remember I had gotten into this sort of habit with other kids, and we would drink in the park. And I remember one day just being so desperate to find someone to just drink with me, and it was the morning, and I just really wanted someone to drink with me, and I was realizing that I had to drink alone, and that was one of many disturbing moments. But those kinds of things have just happened in my life before that make me realize that it can quickly get out of control, and that not everyone is like that with substances or alcohol. So yes, anyway, that was personal, but if you want to read a good memoir on alcoholism, I would recommend Carolyn Knapp's. So Blackout by Sarah Hepola was quite good still. I gave it 4 stars. Then I also finished recently We Were 8 Years in Power, An American Tragedy by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and this was a fabulous, fabulous book, just like Between the World and Me, which I already reviewed. This was a must read. I consider a must read. I think everyone should read it. He writes essays, 1 essay for every year that Barack Obama was president of the United States. But as in all his writing, it's very autobiographical. The political is personal, the personal is political. I think that's what makes his writing so accessible and so readable and so respectable. I don't know, I really admire people who go there, who turn the political into the personal and the personal into the political, because it is. And I also really enjoyed his pre-essays, like basically like the sections that introduce the essays. Those were just as amazing. Yeah, I love Ta-Nehisi Coates, and I'm going to read everything else that he has to write. I will link down below one of his essays that was featured on The Atlantic, which is the paper he writes for, and you can read it for free when you want. It's quite long, so I'd say put time aside to read it. It should take you, I don't know, 20 minutes to read, but it's one of his best essays, and it's extremely important in understanding the racial discrimination and racism that has been rampant and is really institutional in the United States. He really goes in depth into the redlining and housing discrimination that is historically present in Chicago. It was extremely informative, but it was also an amazing essay, and it's called The Case for Reparations. I encourage you to read it when you have the time. If you enjoyed it, then I definitely recommend that you pick up his book and read that one too. I gave it 5 stars. It's a must read. After that, I read And Now We Have Everything on Motherhood Before I Was Ready by Megan O'Connell, which was a memoir on motherhood. Not so much on a young mother, but just, I guess, becoming a mother before she was ready, in the sense that I guess is for a lot of people who have kids, like myself as well. It's an accident, and you kind of think, okay, yes, I want kids, but you don't plan it out, and then when it happens, you just decide that, well, might as well be now. That's kind of the situation. I found it really relatable. It was very funny, very candid. She goes through, I mean, it depends on the kind of birth you've had yourself, but it is relatable for me because she had an emergency C-section, and she also started out wanting a natural birth. She didn't necessarily have the same feelings that I had throughout it, but it was still relatable and very honest and very good to read, and I think very comforting for a lot of women out there who are new mothers. So if you are a new mother, or even if you aren't, or you want to have insight into what it's like, I recommend that you read her memoir. So that's what I've read so far, and since my last read with me. So that puts me at 14 books so far, and I'm in the middle of reading 2 other books. I'm reading a novel, so The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead, and this is a historical fiction novel set in the antebellum. So far, it's pretty good. I haven't read that much historical fiction from that time period. One of my favorite books is The Book of Negroes, written by Lawrence Hill, and that is an amazing historical fiction book. So I don't want to compare it, but that's like a holy grail historical fiction book for me. So so far that's the one that I would recommend you read if you wanted to read a novel like that. And yes, of course, I'm reading a novel that's kind of strange for me, but it was on the stand for Black History Month at the library, and I just picked it up when I was perusing books. I always end up picking up at least one book from the display, from the curated display. I just can't resist. So anyway, I picked this one up and I thought, okay, you know what, I'll just give it a go. I'm gonna try to do this. It's a novel, but it's historical fiction too, you know, so it's not like completely, it's not obviously not made up. It's based on reality. So so I'm reading that, and I'm also reading by Madeleine Albright, Fascism, A Warning, which is coming at a perfect time for me because after reading Ta-Nehisi Coates' book, which also kind of introduces the presidency of Donald Trump, and then after I just watched a couple days ago Michael Moore's documentary Fahrenheit 11/9, which is also about Donald Trump and fascism. It was just the perfect opportunity for me to read this book, which has been on my to-read list for a while. Well, basically since before it came out, because I like put it on my pre-order list on Amazon, and I just use my Amazon list to like gather different books I want, but like I don't actually buy them usually. I just get them at the library. And I'm so thankful, by the way, that you know, that's a great reason to use the library. Like, I looked at how much I would have to spend on all the books that are on my list. It's hundreds of dollars, and like now I don't need to spend that. I just read the books at the library, and like I said before, sometimes there are a couple books that I really want because I want to reread them and have them on hand and just reference, but most of the books I read, I'm okay with just reading once and bringing back to the library. So far this year, like, it's only the Ta-Nehisi Coates books that I want to buy. So Fascism, A Warning, written by Madeleine Albright. Madeleine Albright, I didn't actually know her too well, but she is she is a diplomat, Secretary of State in the US, or was, and she grew up at the dawn of fascism in Europe, basically. And she goes through in her book through fascism in the 20th century, and I think towards the end, like I'm still only 1/4 through, she's going to bring it back to, she's going to come full circle to the fascism that has entered our world now, today. And it's really interesting because I think it's becoming more and more clear to me that we are in a time, in a culture where fascism can very easily take root and grow fervently, and it's really scary. And so anyway, the way that she's, you know, backing up her arguments is she's going back to the dawn of fascism. So she went through Mussolini, she went through Hitler, Franco in Spain. She's going through, now I'm in Serbia and Bosnia. And I will have more to say about this later because I'm still at the beginning, but so far it's really interesting. I'm really glad that I'm reading it. So thank you so much for staying with me for that very long read with me episode. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel. Please like this video if you liked it. Please let me know down below in the comments what you're reading right now, what you would recommend. Yeah, thank you so much. Bye.